World Development System. Chapter 21. After Eva reached home, Melanie asked Eva in a teasing tone, "It seems that even you are learning from John nowadays." "Ha, I wished I had a filial granddaughter and learned pharmacy from me. I guess love triumphs all." "Well, it's okay since I anyway hope that you and John come together." "Grandma, it's nothing like that. I was only training with John so I can improve my magic and combat abilities." "You are only overthinking." Eva flustered a bit and said to Melanie in an irritated and calm tone. Even Eva had only begun to realize her own feelings for John now after she felt irritated about John training with Josephine. "Ho ho! I understand you youngsters the most. You don't have to hide from Grandma, you know." Grandma, Melanie said, nodding her head as if she knew all before she got back to prepare the table for dinner. Eva didn't bother continuing and changed the topic on whether she will attend the banquet tomorrow. Melanie thought about it and said that she was busy experimenting with her herbs and wanted to observe the changes as much as possible and write it down for later references. Meanwhile, John helped the servants for the banquet preparations at the mansion. Next day at the banquet it was very lively. Most of the people from the village arrived. This included Sam, his family, and the 10 leaders as they wanted to express their gratitude towards John for his help previously in farming. John had invited Ron, George, and Paul as well. John thought he should invite George as well since he had helped him in making the soap machine, plus this would anyway cultivate good feelings. George had known about the matter of Antonio, but he still thought business relations mattered more and he didn't have any problems with John, so he decided to accept the invite and arrived at the mansion. At last Jack and Joseph arrived together while Eva's team and Jay arrived a bit earlier. While the factory workers arrived as well. Most of the people who arrived here were amazed by the mansion as they had never seen such a mansion with such furniture. The same was the case with Jack and Joseph. John had already known about Melanie not coming, so he didn't wait and hosted the guests. All of the guests were amazed by the delicacies provided by the servants in the mansion. It was especially for the newly made ice cream which took the show. An ice house was made in the mansion using saltpeter he had brought for gunpowder. During the banquet, even George and Sam's wife asked about the recipes of various items provided at the mansion. "John, you have a lot of new delicacies here which I hadn't eaten earlier," Jay asked John in a very happy tone. "Yeah, I think the same. I never ate these things earlier when I came for training." "Did you plan to surprise everyone this time around?" Josephine agreed to Jay asked John. "Well, this time I wanted to surprise everyone, so I decided to make the servants learn the new dishes and prepare for the banquet this time around. I hope you all liked the food provided." John answered the questions of everyone. He even let the servants give a few recipes to everyone while he kept a few so that it remains a specialty of his mansion. The banquet concluded successfully and John thanked everyone for attending the banquet and started important talks with people. He also handed George and Ron their blueprints for the machines on guns and paper. "So are the preparations done for the journey, and did you get any news about Baron from your family?" John asked Joseph in a serious manner. "Well, they are done, and it seems that as we thought, Baron was only stalling for time since he wanted more money for the North Frontier town. So during the journey, we can meet him and conclude our business with him after terms are agreed between both of you," Joseph said to John in a serious manner. While they were talking, Eva's team and Jay also heard that John was going south with Joseph. Hey, you are going south and you didn't even inform us. Don't you take us as a team?" Eva asked John angrily after she heard their conversation. "Well, I actually wanted to buy slaves for the operations of my factory, so I wanted to go south with Joseph since he was more familiar with the market. I was going to inform you guys today. Do you want to join me? Plus, won't you guys be bored?" John answered as it wasn't that important. After a while, "We don't have anything important these days, plus it would affect our training if you are away, so I guess we will join you." Eva was still angry, but she thought about it and agreed to John's proposal. "Okay, we will be leaving tomorrow with Joseph via the East Seaport." Later John asked Jay to join him since he wanted Jay's opinion on the hunters and archers he was going to buy. Jay thought for a while, agreed to him since the pay was good and he anyways wanted to travel around because he was bored with the monotonous hunting life. Jack wasn't joining them since he had other work, so they would meet up when John will be returning from the south via carriages at Dolores for his negotiations with Baron Mendez. Jack wanted to prepare as much as possible for the winter disaster this time around since the North Frontier City was his area of domain in his family and he didn't want to lose it. So it seems that everyone was going south with Joseph and John this time around. They were going via the sea because there was a whole fleet of Morgan family going south to conduct their trade and it would be much safer going with a group. Plus it would anyways save time and reduce tolls going via the sea. The only problem was the noble-funded pirates, but it was safer with a fleet this time around. Hence all of them got busy in their preparations for their journey the next day. This time Grandma Melanie didn't nag as she hoped. Eva and John got closer while John was also learning at an alarmingly fast speed, so she wanted a breather in teaching him as she thought John would learn everything in no time. As there was no time, everyone was in a hurry to make preparations for the journey. Sally as always joined them as she didn't want to be left behind, while Josephine had no qualms about this issue. This made Sally very sure that there was something going on, as both Josephine and Eva seemed proactive nowadays, but she couldn't figure it out but knew that it was related to John somehow. However, she was more interested in food served in John's mansion this time around, so she didn't bother much about other things and hence started doing the preparations for the journey. Chapter 22. So it seems that everyone was going south with Joseph and John this time around. They were going via the sea because there was a whole fleet of Morgan family going south to conduct their trade and it would be much safer going with a group. Plus it would anyways save time and reduce tolls going via the sea. The only problem was the noble-funded pirates, but it was safer with a fleet this time around. Hence all of them got busy in their preparations for their journey the next day. This time Grandma Melanie didn't nag as she hoped. Eva and John got closer while John was also learning at an alarmingly fast speed, so she wanted a breather in teaching him as she thought John would learn everything in no time. As there was no time, everyone was in a hurry to make preparations for the journey. Sally as always joined them as she didn't want to be left behind, while Josephine had no qualms about this issue. This made Sally very sure that there was something going on, as both Josephine and Eva seemed proactive nowadays, but she couldn't figure it out but knew that it was related to John somehow. However, she was more interested in food served in John's mansion this time around, so she didn't bother much about other things and hence started doing the preparations for the journey. Next day Jay, Eva, and her team and everyone else left for the East Seaport. John also took most of his money with him since he was going to make big deals this time around. They left with Joseph as he had prepared carriages for travel this time around. They reached East Sea City in a day after they traveled from North Frontier City. John had automatically become the chef for the group this time around. After they reached the port, they saw various fleets of various nobles this time around. However, only Morgan family recently traveled with a big fleet here in North because of their soap business with John. This time the fleet was led by Captain Eric, who served in Morgan family for a long time. It was so that he could protect both the trade fleet and Joseph. Captain Eric was a tall middle-aged man with sharp features, fair complexion, and brown hair. He had a slight tan, probably because of all the sailing he did at the seas. He looked like any other Navy men from medieval times, however he had jolly nature unlike most strict men from the Army or Navy. This was because he believed in having fun and not be serious all the time. So he was like a handsome Navy man with a jolly nature. The woman had a good impression of Eric after meeting him. The fleet was with 5 ships, with 1 main big ship and 4 medium-sized ships. The fleet was equipped with a Morgan family flag. Soaps were loaded in the main ship while other materials for trade were loaded in other remaining ships. The fleet had a total of 110 men, with 30 men in the main ship and 20 in other ships. These men were sailors and hunters, as they perfectly fitted the criteria for Navy battles. Knights weren't preferred in the sea, where mobility was important, as they would be considered more of a burden. The fleet also had 2 magicians as support for healing men at times of danger. Captain Eric was drinking and having fun with his fellow men on the ship, as they had nothing to do and all the preparations were already made and they were only waiting for Joseph to return for the past 2 days. Joseph quite liked Eric because of his jolly personality, unlike the strict men from his family who only preferred interests above anything else. After getting informed by the guard that Joseph had arrived with everyone else, Eric stopped the chattering and started giving commands to his men to prepare for the journey. He then arrived to invite Joseph into the ship. "Joseph, you have arrived at last. I was pretty bored for these 2 days waiting for you." "Well, we are anyway prepared for departure, so would you like to rest first or should we depart immediately? So what do you think?" Joseph asked John and others for their opinion. "Well, I think it's better to depart early now that sun and seas are clear," John and Jay said their opinion. "We don't have any problem with an early departure. I guess it's better if we leave now. What do you think, Captain?" Eva said to Joseph and asked Eric's opinion. "Well, it's certainly true that now is a good time to leave," Eric said his opinion to everyone. "Since everyone is in agreement, I shouldn't be a party pooper and ruin everyone's fun. Eric, we will depart after all the preparations are made. Ready the men and load the ship." Joseph gave his order to Eric. Joseph later introduced everyone to Eric after the fleet set sail. During these days on the ship, Eric was caught trying to steal clothes of women, but they didn't think anything of it, and it was only later known from Joseph that Eric was a pervert. Joseph sighed as he said the harsh truth regretfully. However, this didn't change the fact that Eric was Joseph's most trusted man. After watching all the shenanigans of Eric, the looks of all the women changed from a good handsome man to a pervert with looks of scorn burning from their eyes. The sailors on the ship were all laughing as they had long known how women's views would change after staying together for a few days because they had seen this scene quite a few times already. "People don't understand me," Eric sighed as he left. Before he left, he glared at Joseph. It seemed his eyes said the words traitor to him. People became used to the atmosphere on the ship. John also taught the chef of the ship some of his recipes as he was plenty tired these days from all the cooking. During these 3 days of travel, they experienced attacks from pirates only once. However, after watching the big fleet, the pirates only tried to probe and left after they watched the firepower of John's team from the main ship. They thought the fleet was well armed this time around and they would most probably lose if they didn't have enough firepower to overpower and occupy the ships. Chapter 23. It seems that they came to probe this time around after hearing the profits we made after 2 trips, Joseph said to Eric in a serious tone. "Well, it was expected anyway. Maybe one of your siblings or cousins informed them of the source of soaps this time. I guess most of your brothers and sisters couldn't wait to get their hands on the soaps you brought this time," Eric replied to Joseph. "Well, that's true as well. Plus my standing has increased this time after I made this deal with John. But I already have Dad's backing for this business relationship. For him, Morgan family interests always come first, so we don't have to worry for some time," Joseph said to Eric. "But what about your uncles? I don't think they would be happy watching your business grow day by day," Eric asked Joseph. "We don't have to worry for now since Dad is backing us, but we would have to be careful of their conspiracies, and then there are nobles backing them as well, Joseph said. "Well, this problem would have arrived eventually. Plus this deal was too good to be thrown. You should know that aristocrats don't mind spending on luxury, and you should already know the potential market for these soaps, whether in the country or outside the country. The elf and demonic domain have already shown a good response, and so has the nobles from imperial capital. We should take things as they come. Plus Dad has already negotiated with Marquis Ray," Joseph continued. "Since your father has already negotiated with Marquis Ray, then a lot of our outside problems are solved. Then that only leaves us with internal problems of your brothers and cousins. I guess your father hopes you solve them on your own to prove your worth in the family," Eric replied. "Well, for now just plant more spies on my siblings and cousins and try to bribe their men so that we can get important intel at the times they are conspiring. I think that will do for now. I just worry about my uncles helping them behind the scenes," Joseph said to Eric. "Since you betrayed me last time around, I would need the red feather bow you bought last time from the auction for this job as compensation," Eric said laughingly to Joseph to lighten up the mood. Well, that won't be a problem, but I would still not help you peeping at women, you know. Joseph smiled and replied to Eric and continued to their usual conversation. During these days on the ship, John was quite aware of the change in the feelings of Eva and Josephine, but he deliberately acted dense as he was quite scared by his previous relationship on Earth. Additionally, it seemed that his increased brain abilities had toned down his emotions a bit. But on some occasions, he would show his emotions, like the time when Antonio was aiming for his life or his time with Grandma Melanie, as he felt quite affectionate from her care as he was an orphan on Earth and yearned for such affection. Meanwhile, Sally also joined them in training as she didn't want to get left out. It was also during this time that she understood what was going on between them. She deliberately teased both of them in front of John, which forced John to act dense on these occasions, for which John improved her close combat effectiveness. As John didn't have much knowledge about her magic, he couldn't offer her any pointers on them. Normally John would be carefree, but he would always keep his guard up when he was in the presence of Sally. Her instincts were quite good when it came to judging characters, which he had already seen on previous occasions. During these days John understood that pirates usually didn't attack the Morgan family fleet after watching their flag, and the one that attacked them was only probing them for future endeavors. From this, he understood that family connections and strength was very important when traveling via sea, as nobles didn't like merchants bypassing through the sea to conduct trade and save their taxes. So many times they resorted to robbery to give a lesson to those who harmed their interests and for a quick buck as well. Even the imperial family kept their eyes closed when it came to pirates in the sea, as they knew it was the nobles doing it. While Joseph and Eric were conversing in the cabin, John joined them for a drink and saw a little bit heavy mood between them. He understood maybe it was related with pirates, because from one of the sailors earlier he got to know about how big fleets weren't usually attacked unless there was prior planning, and they were mostly done by aristocrats. So at first John thought that maybe it was related to aristocrats. So Joseph later told him about his family politics and how they wouldn't have to worry about other nobles for now, as Marquis Ray supported them. Only dukes could most probably attack them, but even Marquis Ray had a duke to support him, so it wasn't that easy for other dukes as well. However, there was still a jolly mood as they didn't let these things bother them too much, and they had their drinks later on. After 4 days of travel, beyond the horizon they saw a big port town unlike the one at East Sea City. It was currently sunny and they didn't have any problems at the sea from the weather this time around. The city's name was Pearl, as its very foundation was based on pearls harvested from the seashore long ago by Marquis Ray's ancestors. It was a very big city, and the port was flourishing with lots of mercantile boats as well as fishing boats with coastal guards patrolling the nearby area. After watching the Morgan family flag, they were immediately allowed to land on port and unload their goods at the hangar and warehouse. After arriving, the first thing Joseph ordered was to report to his family about his arrival via his men and let the other men have rest at the nearby bars. Eva and others first looked around the market while Joseph was following them, waiting for his butler and men to arrive with carriages. While going to the market, Joseph introduced them the various specialties of Pearl City. The pearl and precious stone market was monopolized by Marquis Ray, while metals were in abundance, and hence various families were given rights over their mining and export. This city was 7 times bigger than the East Sea City, and this showed how much developed Pearl City was. After going through the market, they returned to the bar where everyone was resting. Later, an old man who looked to be in his 70s came with Eric and greeted him. It seemed that they were already waiting for their arrival. The old man wasn't very tall but was filled with energy when he greeted all of them. This old man's name was Philip and was Joseph's butler since he was young. He is used to handling all the business affairs of Joseph and counsels him regarding certain situations. After the greetings, all of them headed towards the guest house Philip had prepared for them. After which they headed towards the west of the city in the carriages prepared. Chapter 24. After going through the market, they returned to the bar where everyone was resting. Later, an old man who looked to be in his 70s came with Eric and greeted him. It seemed that they were already waiting for their arrival. The old man wasn't very tall but was filled with energy when he greeted all of them. This old man's name was Philip and was Joseph's butler since he was young. He is used to handling all the business affairs of Joseph and counsels him regarding certain situations. After the greetings, all of them headed towards the guest house Philip had prepared for them. After which they headed towards the west of the city in the carriages prepared. The river flowed from west to east then in the sea in Pearl City. Most of the development of Pearl City was done on the coastal areas with the center and east of Pearl City as the main focus while west is focused on mining and agriculture. The city's population was in millions as there was a thriving commercial and agricultural industry and they only had to focus on sea pirates when it came to borders. They headed to the southwest of the city reaching the mansion prepared for them. This was Joseph's own mansion. After reaching they first rested themselves up and then during the lunch, they got together and got to the main business. During the lunch, butler Philip told Joseph the matters concerning his family and his businesses. It seemed that one of his brothers leaked the information about his source of soaps to one of his uncles. In the Morgan family, everyone was vying for power whether it was his father, uncles, siblings, or cousins. As a part of such a big family, it was inevitable that internal differences would always arise from the ambition of people and hence growing this way. He also briefed Joseph on the sales of rose soaps which were big in the noble circles for now and he hoped that they could supply more for rich merchants as well. They had also negotiated with Marquis Ray's help in exporting them to other countries and duchies for a part of profits. So his father hoped that both Joseph and John could come and negotiate with them since they were already in Pearl City. Both Joseph and John agreed to it and sent their reply to the invitation of Marquis and Joseph's father. From this, it could be seen that both his father and Marquis had placed their bets on them since they wanted to negotiate a long-term deal and wanted to increase their market and profits. Plus since John was new to merchant and noble circles they hoped to cultivate an ally for future endeavors. Since it was an exchange of benefits there would be negotiations on both sides for maximum share. The butler handed in the reply to one of the servants within the mansion who hurriedly left for the main castle. Today they had decided to survey the market as Eva and her team didn't want to visit the slave market so butler Philip had decided to tour Eva and her team while Joseph led John and Jay for the slave market. Joseph and his team reached the center of Pearl City where there was a big market. Here they could see people of various races. There were dwarves, half-dwarves, elves, half-elves, demons, half-demons and other demonic tribes and other races. Some were slaves while some seemed extremely wealthy. For example, there was a big group of demons who seemed extremely wealthy and were going into the auction hall. These demons were led by a beautiful woman and there were guards under her entourage. From Joseph John got to know that most of the other races were either captured in wars or it was the mercenaries abducting them from the borders. The demons they met here were most likely nobles of the demonic kingdom in the northwest. The demonic kingdom's name was Fire Abyss Kingdom as it was ruled by Fire Abyss demons for the past 600 years. Most of people remained slaves as their family or kingdom didn't redeem them as it cost them a fortune. Most of the time kingdom only redeemed elites or the ones they considered useful. Many merchants who sold pearls and precious stones here mostly bought them from Marquis Ray's company and then sold it here and other places. Other races as well owned the businesses here which sold their own specialties, like the elves mostly sold artwork here while demons sold dark magic, precious magical stones and talismans, and the dwarves as always were proficient in making weapons and tools. Morgan family was the biggest patron of Marquis Ray while Marquis Ray owned a total of 15 territories with Pearl City being one of the important pillars of his income. Joseph and John later arrived at the slave market. Joseph introduced him to the guy from whom his own family usually bought the slaves for the operations of their company. This guy was a middle-aged man and he usually dealt with slaves for Marquis Ray. Though nobles handled the slave trade they didn't like to do it in front of everyone so they employed their henchmen to do their dirty work. This man's name was Tom. He was a bit fat and wore luxurious clothes but when it came to business, he was a professional was the description Joseph told John before arriving. The slave market was very big here as it was a flourishing port city and it was easier for people to smuggle people via the sea. After inquiring, John got to know the prices of slaves from Tom. One normal slave was 5 gold coins. One night slave was 50 gold coins. One dwarf was 20 gold coins. One magician was between 50 to 100 or more gold coins depending on their job. However, it differed from people to people. John right now only needed at least 100 normal men. Chapter 25. 20 archers/hunters and some educated individuals for handling his mansion and business smoothly. John was really surprised that slaves only cost 5 gold coins since his soaps cost 3 gold coins. Joseph later explained that it was only his rose soaps that costed 3 gold coins and above since they had a better quality and there was no competition in the market, and there was this thing about nobles who didn't think when they spent on their luxuries. Other factors which resulted in slaves being low cost was because of a very high population in the continent. John thought for a while and understood, so came to the conclusion that maybe it was because of his previous value of humans from Earth which muddled his head here at Arkan. From John's conversation and demand of slaves, Tom got to know that he had gotten a big fish this time around to sell his slaves. Additionally, it costed money to maintain slaves, so it was good for him. It was only the knights, warriors, and magicians which were useful since they always got sold early. While looking at the dead slaves, he looked at the bunch of people who were fragile but seemed quite knowledgeable from their behavior and clothes. After inquiring Tom, he got to know that they were from a well-known family who got their family fleet hijacked and looted by pirates after they offended a noble's son. Additionally, they were in debt when they were doing the last ventures, so that was how their family became slaves because of losing their last business. It was a family of 5, with a middle-aged man and woman. There were 3 kids, with the oldest being 16 and the youngest being 10 and the second one being 13. All of them knew how to read and write, and it seemed that it was the 16-year-old boy who had offended the son of noble. From his eyes all John could see was his determination. The only problem with buying them was they would offend the noble if they bought them. However, this could be solved if people didn't know, plus someone would anyway have to buy them. They costed a total of 40 gold coins since they were educated, and it was rare for common men to get educated during this era. Mostly nobles or rich merchants used to get education privately. Then he proceeded on to buy dwarves, as they would be helpful in building machines later on. There were no experienced dwarves as they were mostly bought early on by nobles and merchants. But there were still apprentices. These dwarves were brought by big mercenary guilds. The slave trade just facilitated these mercenary guilds to earn more. Many times they were used by the nobles to do their bidding in the dark. But mercenary guilds were a powerful organization, but as there were conflicts of interests, they weren't united. Many mercenary guilds were just a cover for nobles. There was a middle-aged dwarf lying over the corner. The thing about this dwarf was that he was the most violent of the slaves they acquired. Tom only knew that he was violent towards everyone, whether dwarf or not. So many people didn't buy him because he would be hard to handle and it would be less efficient for work. This dwarf's name was Tornwall. John didn't care about it though, as he only cared if he made his machines. The circumstances in which he was sold was rather peculiar as well. He was sold by dwarves royalty themselves. It seems he had a story that was hidden for now. Jay helped him pick up 20 archers for now. They weren't expensive like the knights or magicians. And later on he picked up 100 slaves. Of all of them 80 were humans and 20 dwarfs were for his smithy. So in total, he bought 127 slaves for which he paid 1,500 gold coins. If he wanted elves for architecture and building he would buy them later on, was his thought. Meanwhile, you don't have to worry about their transportation. When my fleet comes to North Frontier Town we will deliver them. We would anyway get commission, and since my family has connections to Marquis we would mostly get the transportation job. Joseph said to John, who had a face filled with a dilemma. Let's go to auction for now. Since there is nobility here today, I think there will be some good items sold today. You don't have to worry about slaves for now. They can be controlled via runes engraved. John didn't know that runes can be used to control life and death of slaves. It was his first time watching runes to control them. However, many slaves sometimes were violent who didn't fear death, and for slave dealers, they were goods who were worth money, so they always try to keep them alive. Okay, let's go to the auction. I will talk to the slaves later on, John said to Joseph, and moved on while Tom did all the preparations for the slaves and made sure they were in good condition when they reached North Frontier Town, as they were the instructions of John. Tom understood well that John planned to cultivate loyal slaves, so he wanted to treat them good like normal people. However, this came from John as a natural instinct from his life on earth. Soon they got out of the slave market and got into one of the biggest buildings in the Pearl City. The auction was 3-story tall, with the highest floor reserved for nobles, middle floor reserved for rich merchants or those who had invitations, and ground floor for normal men who planned to see the auction and buy something. These men also served as a platform for free advertisement. After entering the building, they were greeted by one of the managers of auction. "Ah, Master Joseph, you came after a long time here, and it seems you brought someone new this time around." The manager greeted Joseph as he saw Joseph entering the auction. "Well, that is true. He is my friend as well as my business partner, you can call him John. He came from the north with me to settle some things and tour south at the same time. Right now we are only coming to look at the auction and see if there is anything interesting today," Joseph said to the manager in a carefree tone. It seems both of them knew each other for a long time. "That is no problem. Today you will be quite surprised by the items we have brought this time around. I am very sure you won't be disappointed. But you have to be careful when you bid today, since there is royalty from other countries as well," the manager replied to Joseph after greeting John. "Okay, let's head inside." Joseph thanked and agreed to the manager and headed inside the auction. The manager then led them to the second floor. From this interaction, John understood that Joseph was a regular here and hence allowed to sit on the second floor. There was a huge platform in front of them in the auction hall, and all the 3 floors could see the auction platform from their floors. Chapter 26. The manager then led them to the second floor. From this interaction, John understood that Joseph was a regular here and hence allowed to sit on the second floor. There was a huge platform in front of them in the auction hall, and all the 3 floors could see the auction platform from their floors. On the topmost floor there were nobles of many different regions and countries present today. However, it was mostly the offspring who liked to spend their money and not the other way, since the nobles would only come to auctions if there was something very valuable sold at the auctions. Those auctions were mainly held in the cities of dukes and the imperial city of royal family. In the topmost floor the main manager of the auction was entertaining various other nobles. This included the demon lady and her entourage as well. The demon lady had 2 grey horns, she had bluish-grey long curly hair, blue round pupils, big eyes, she was a tall woman with a height of 6 feet 1 inch and bluish-grey lips, she had a blue crown on her head which had 5 sharp leaf-like points. She wore a tight one-piece skirt dress, which had black as background and sky blue as patterns on the black background. She wore indigo color gloves, she wore blue heels and black socks which reached her knees. She was quite a beauty with a full bust and full bottom, while on her right hand was a long dark blue thorn with a black handle as a weapon. She had a white complexion with indigo ribbon tied behind her head. She also wore a cape behind her back which was black from outside and dark blue from inside. She also wore a necklace with a sky blue pearl. She looked like a 25-year-old beauty which had all the aura of royalty. It seemed that she wore something which was something unique in Elias' kingdom, but those nobles weren't flustered a bit. And then Joseph explained to John that the demoness wore the royalty clothes of Fire Abyss Kingdom. Her name was Diana Blucia and she was the daughter of Duke Blucia of the Fire Abyss Kingdom. Their family was adept in water and dark arts from their bloodline. They were one of the 4 dukes of the Fire Abyss Kingdom. Her entourage was grand as well, with numerous knights and magicians with a maid and a butler beside her at all times. Many of the noble children were trying to start a conversation with her, but to no avail as she simply ignored them. It was her maid and butler who declined the nobles politely so as to not tear their faces fully. It seemed she was only interested in the auction held today in Pearl City. This time the announcer brought the next item. Previously the unimportant or only common items were sold. This time main items were starting to be presented after a long wait. The manager Oswell ran down and started arranging the security guards for the protection of the items, as they didn't like to take chances. As it was the main show, the manager decided to hold the auction from now on, then announced the first item. The first item presented this time is a longevity potion which is useful for all races, and this was specially made by one of the court magician and herbalist from the Elias kingdom. This potion can increase the age limit of a person by 15 years. I am certain all of you are astonished by the first item presented this time around. This item was specially bought by our auction 3 days back from one of the princes, though we still can't disclose which prince sent the item. The starting price of this potion will start from 50 gold coins. There were voices of exclamation from the third floor as nobles were scrambling to bid on this item. However, many understood from the announcement of the manager why the potion managed to land its way in this auction instead of the auction at Imperial City or cities of dukes. But many nobles still bid on it, as it was rare to get a longevity potion, and most of them were grabbed by big nobles and royal family for training their knights. 55 gold coins. 60 gold coins. 70 gold coins, said one of the barons. After the bidding stopped at 200 gold coins and momentum stumped a bit. Then the butler of Miss Diana stood up and bid 500 gold coins. John wasn't really interested in this potion, plus he remembered Joseph's initial warning that he shouldn't offend the great nobles, so he didn't try it as he was new in Pearl City and Marquis Ray's dominion. Then a series of items were auctioned off. The manager announced the next item this time around. The next item this time is one of the Longthorn swords made by the craftsmen of Blucia family from the Fire Abyss Kingdom. This time Miss Diana decided to auction off one of the swords crafted by her family, as she hopes to show off the majesty of Blucia craftsmen. This sword will be started with a bid of 100 gold coins. 120 gold coins. 150 gold coins. 200 gold coins. Then suddenly came a bid of 1,000 gold coins from John's seat. John had decided to buy this sword as he was always using the rugged sword bought from George earlier and wanted to equip an excellent sword, and from his calculations, he deemed this sword worth of at least 2,000 gold coins. John bid earlier as he wanted to scare off the potential competitors for the sword. Many nobles in the second floor stared at John. They thought he was someone new as they didn't recognize him, but understood that John was with Joseph after watching them sit in the same box. Meanwhile, Diana's maid said to Diana, "Miss, it seems that this guy isn't buying that sword to show you off and buying it for his own practical use. Isn't it quite amusing that we see such a guy after a long time?" The old butler remarked as well, "Well, that seems to be true, as after watching his attire he looks like a guy with multiple professions, mainly sneaky techniques, and it also happens that he also knows that boy from the Morgan family. Recently our men said that it was this boy Joseph who brought those new soaps from north to sell over here. His father hid it quite well, but as we know his own brothers sold off the information. Additionally, don't you think this guy who has bid for the sword has some relation with the soaps? Plus, from looking at the reactions of these noble children, none of them know this guy. I don't think nobody would have this kind of money to spend on a sword." From the explanation and conclusion of the butler, the maid was quite astonished. She knew that the old man was quite a crafty, sly, and unpredictable guy. But just by looking at Joseph and the bid from John, the old man deduced so much from the information of his men. Chapter 27. This old man was appointed by Diana's father so he could help her at all the times and secretly protect her from assassinations as well, which she didn't know and shouldn't care about. He was one of the most trusted guys from Duke Blucia's people working in information collection and assassination. He was a slender guy with a handsome look on his face and 2 white-gray curled horns, black and white hair neatly combed. He was what you call a perfect handsome butler. His name was mostly famous by Vlad of the Dark in the underworld. However, he was currently only Vlad. The maid's name Maurice. She was a woman with 2 black horns, height of 5 feet 7 inches, and she was well endowed on her curves. She had lived with Diana from her childhood. Her parents long followed Blucia family, and same was the case with her, and hence she was with Diana and training as a maid from her childhood. She had black hair, black pupils, and a busted chest, and wore normal maid clothes while following orders and accomplishing her tasks. Meanwhile, Diana smiled from Vlad's deduction and remarked as well, "It seems this time our journey was quite good at this auction. In the first place, I was looking for the producer of those unique soaps after I tried them. Maybe we can profit from this encounter back at home and we can anyway have an excuse to meet him since he bought our sword. Selling this sword was quite a profitable venture this time around, don't you think so, Vlad? Vlad smiled and replied to Diana slyly, that's certainly true, young miss. Your instincts were quite on the target, since I always wondered you were only selling that sword to show off to the nobles in Elias' kingdom. Diana furrowed her brows a bit but didn't reply, as she knew she would be in this old man's trap and make a fool of herself. Meanwhile the maid Maurice was giggling by the side and stopped only after she saw that glare from Diana. One of the nobles who was the patron for the prince bid for the sword, but John won the sword by again raising it to 1,500 gold coins. He and many nobles thought that this sucker was only buying this sword to please Miss Diana, and thought Miss Diana won't pay any attention to this non-aristocratic boy, as that amount of gold coins simply amounted to nothing for her. After the bidding, John bought some herbs for 1,000 gold coins more and left the auction, as Joseph had warned him that they were attracting more gazes from the nobles. After they left, Diana's butler chased and stopped them after they left the auction. John's reactions were quite fast when he sensed Vlad's presence nearby. Watching John's reaction, even Vlad was quite shocked by it, because he thought these were like the reactions of most alert animal. However, that was not the case for John, since these were his normal reactions. However, Vlad continued and stopped the duo and introduced himself without any malicious intentions and asked them in a polite manner with a smiling face. Would the two of you mind stopping and meeting our Miss Diana? She hopes to meet both of you and have some conversation with you. I hope both of you don't mind. Joseph immediately recognized this man, as he had seen this man's dealings with his family. However, none of his siblings knew about the dealings their parents did with this guy. Joseph looked at John, and John understood from his gaze that he knew this guy. Okay, we will meet Miss Diana, as John was quite grateful for this sword being auctioned off. Vlad smiled and told to Joseph. It seems you still remember me, little boy. Hasn't it been quite a few years already? Well, you were standing out quite a lot when you came to our house, so it's not surprising that I remember you. By the way, why don't you introduce your name already? Joseph said to Vlad. After thinking for a while, Vlad replied to Joseph. Well, that won't be a problem. My name is Vlad. I am quite surprised that your elders still kept their promise to not reveal my identity. Anyways, it seems that this is the boy who is making and selling those unique soaps to you. Would both of you mind considering a deal with W.D.S family? After hearing his name and the sneaky dealings of his family, Joseph understood that he was one called Vlad of the Dark. Most possibly his parents hired him and his assassins to deal with some of their enemies. It seems Vlad deliberately revealed his name so that he can show his own value and there could be a good deal between them. He was quite shocked at first that he recognized John to be the one making soaps, but he still kept his calm. While John still maintained his calm, as he didn't feel any malicious intentions from his sixth sense body technique, so he was quite at ease, but he still understood that Vlad was much stronger than him, plus Joseph knew him as well, so he was at ease for a while. Afterward, they came into the auction from the back and got into a room made for important guests in the auction. Diana was already waiting for John and Joseph with her maid. She was drinking tea and snacks bought from Fire Abyss Kingdom, which was served by Maurice. Maurice carried most of Diana's luxuries, as she knew Diana was quite a picky character when it came to certain things. Vlad first greeted Diana and introduced John and Joseph to her. Vlad quite knew where to shoot off his tongue and where not to, as the face of W.D.S family was more important to him than his sly jokes on personal occasions, so he behaved as a butler should. Diana maintained her loftiness, as it was important to maintain a noble demeanor in front of other people, and waited for them to speak first. Vlad understood the situation and hence he decided to speak first on everyone's behalf. Chapter 28. Vlad first greeted Diana and introduced John and Joseph to her. Vlad quite knew where to shoot off his tongue and where not to, as the face of W.D.S family was more important to him than his sly jokes on personal occasions, so he behaved like a butler should. Diana maintained her loftiness, as it was important to maintain a noble demeanor in front of other people, and waited for them to speak first. Vlad understood the situation and hence he decided to speak first on everyone's behalf. Vlad invited both John and Joseph as said with a smiling face, as you might know, Miss Diana is the only daughter of Duke Blucia of the Fire Abyss Kingdom. We had a proposal which could benefit both the parties, plus young Miss was very interested in having a conversation with you, so what do you think? This time John said, it won't harm to listen to his proposal first and then decide later. What do you think, Joseph? Sounds good, I don't have problems with it. Joseph looked deeply at Vlad and answered John. This time Diana decided to talk. Well, your soaps are quite well made and very popular, so I was very much interested in it after using it for the first time, so then I had decided to go to Ilias Kingdom and meet the one who made it. Luckily we chanced upon you and Joseph. So would you be interested in being the sole provider of these soaps to Fire Abyss Kingdom via us? Of course we will compensate you guys with gold coins and other means, so what do you think? Diana smiled and said to them while drinking her tea. Wait, first let me ask him a few questions, Joseph suddenly said to Diana and pointed to Vlad. Vlad expected as much from Joseph and immediately agreed to Joseph's suggestion. But you will only get to ask one confidential question and you can't ask anything related to Blucia family. You see, I can't go on spilling secrets everywhere. Joseph thought for a while and understood that Vlad wanted to contain as much information as possible, but he still agreed since he got to ask one question he wanted to ask for a long time. Joseph thought for a while and asked his question. Why were you hired by my family last time you came to our mansion? Vlad smiled cunningly and answered Joseph. Your grandfather hired us for an assassination of someone who was bothering your family. So whom did you guys assassinate? Joseph asked. Sorry, this is the second question which I can't answer, so can we get ready for other business? Vlad had a smile of a sadist where it seemed that Joseph just got played in the palm of his hands. As soon as he heard the answer he understood that he got played by Vlad. He had an angry look on his face, but he more cursed his own naivety as he had asked his question eagerly and thought Vlad would at least answer everything on this subject. Meanwhile, Diana and her maid Maurice saw the show which happened in front of them. They were quite used to these scenes already, as they had seen this type of scene playing a lot of times in the mansion or outside their mansion. Diana had a serious face while Maurice was giggling. Diana didn't laugh as it would be rude to their guests, and she also remembered her own embarrassing conversations with Vlad which had her angry. John also saw this play out from the sidelines and understood the sort of person Vlad was. Sorry for the previous disturbance, let's get to business first. We can have that conversation later as well. Diana said to Joseph and John while she glared at Vlad, who then got behind Diana and started preparing other documents as if it didn't matter to him. In the first place, he never wanted to spill confidential contracts he made in past. It's okay, it was on my personal business, so Vlad was not obligated, and there might be some contract conditions which both sides had to adhere, which I didn't consider, Joseph calmly answered Diana. Joseph anyways cleared the possibility that Vlad might have come for protection purposes last time around, and it was assassination which he received. So how many soaps can you guys provide us? Diana got straight to the point. Well, it depends on your number. Since we have already acquired the required man force, we can make soaps in bulk from now on. This time it was John who answered her question. Diana just wanted to probe them and understood that they had enough man force for large-scale production of those soaps. We would require 100,000 soaps half-monthly, and it will mostly increase based on the demand in the kingdom, since these soaps are already popular in Ilias, and I think it would be the same in Fire Abyss Kingdom. Vlad then came close to Diana and said in her ears. We can also give you guys intelligence support from domestic as well as international enemies as proposed by Vlad. Diana said to both of them after listening to Vlad's suggestion. Vlad then gave one of the documents from his hands to Joseph as their proof of sincerity. After looking at the document, Joseph understood how his information got disclosed while they were delivering the soaps this time around. It turns out it was one of his elder brothers who leaked their information and why their fleet almost got attacked. He also understood how Vlad came to the conclusion that John was the soap maker this time around. Vlad meanwhile said to both of them with a curious smile, both of you kids should be more careful from now, these soaps will bring a lot of change this time around. Just a word of advice, one of your brothers contacted a duke from your kingdom and they might target your soaps, and it is not the one who leaked your information. Vlad usually wouldn't give free advice, but both Diana and he had taken an interest in both of them, and he hoped they could further this relation with them, which would be better for future relationships between the two parties, and he also felt good about them, unlike the other people whom he usually met. His instincts told him that this relation would help the Blucia family later on, and so he decided to reveal a lot of cards. Additionally, he was very curious about John, as he didn't have any killing intent or blood from his aura, but he still had those good senses just like a predator, so he thought it was because of his natural talent. John gave it a thought and decided against increasing the prices of his soap after he saw the abilities of Vlad and his men in information collection. Chapter 29. Joseph as well was happy since he got a good source of information, and the same was true for John because he understood the importance of knowing the information when it came to people who were targeting them. Miss Diana, your men can collect the soaps at North Frontier Town in Northeast. You guys can come by sea or land and it will cost you 3 gold coins per soap. Meanwhile, you guys can expect new items coming from the factory in the future, John thought and deliberately said to them. Interesting, Vlad whispered slowly, which only the maid could hear. While Diana then signaled to Vlad and he gave a box of money to John and other documents to Joseph. Miss Diana, I see you that you have quite a variety of luxurious food from Fire Abyss. I would recommend you visit John's mansion, as they have quite a variety of unique and delicious food there. I can only say that I have not eaten that food anywhere else. For your information, John himself is a good cook as well. Joseph thought and gave Miss Diana a place where she can have the new delicious cuisines, since she seemed like a picky character when it came to food, and he also thought to add more troubles to John after watching John acting dumb in front of obvious confrontations in the ship this time around. He obviously understood why John did that, so he would like to see him tough spots, as John always liked to act cool in front of others. John furrowed his brows, and this time he glared at Joseph with a pair of angry eyes. He obviously understood what Joseph was trying to pull here, and he didn't like it when it came to cooking. Joseph conveniently ignored John's glare and smirked while Vlad was trying to understand what was going on. Diana meanwhile was quite interested since John could cook and had made new cuisines, so she had decided that next time she would visit North Frontier Town with Vlad, as she was anyways traveling Elias Kingdom. Okay, I will certainly visit your mansion, John, and taste the new cuisines. I hope you entertain us well. Diana thanked Joseph and John, and both parties bid their farewell. As John and Joseph were going out of the auction from the back, the noble who competed with John for the sword saw both of them come out of the auction. He had already noticed Diana and her 2 servants had already left after the duo of John and Joseph left the auction. Now he understood why both of them came from the back of the mansion. However, he didn't act in front of them, as he understood that both of them were invited by Diana, as he saw Vlad coming to lead them out. Vlad saw that the noble was looking at them, and the same was the case for John. Vlad smiled at the noble after he saw him looking at John with angry eyes. After looking at Vlad, he decided to first inform Third Prince Hector and then take action later on after getting his instructions. Prince Hector was not in Pearl City, and he was busy with royal gathering, or else he would have come over here today. This noble's name was Bard and was the 3rd son of a marquis in the west of Elias Kingdom. He always hoped to join the Knight Order of a prince, since it was his brother who was going to inherit the title of marquis, and he hoped to win the higher title than a baron by fighting with Prince Hector in the next war with his men. He left without saying anything. Joseph only later saw that both Vlad and John were looking at someone, but he couldn't recognize that person since he already left. So he asked both of them about the person they were looking at. Nothing, just a small fly peeking from shadows, Vlad replied to Joseph, while John didn't bother about the person looking at them. After this encounter, Vlad was now sure that John had very extraordinary senses. That's why he felt familiar with John when he first saw his reaction when he greeted them. But he was still surprised, since John was human and it required a lot of experience and time to develop such acute senses over the surroundings. John and Joseph decided to meet Eva, Jay, and her team. Jay had already left after they made their purchases at the slave market. He was more interested in the market and was hoping to find new weapons and poisons. After John and Joseph left, Vlad came inside the room and Diana asked him. So what's your opinion on both of them? Well, that boy John is quite interesting. And the Morgan boy is the same as always, naive but trustworthy and always cautious. According to my observations, that boy John is well versed in most of the forms of combat. I only verified it after I saw his combat positioning when I led them out. And it also seems that he knows a variety of other professions after hearing your conversation last time around. Plus he has very acute senses when it comes to detecting people. However, both of them are trustworthy. I think we can trust them and it's okay to deal with them in business. My instincts say that both of them will be helpful to us in the near future. Additionally, both of them seem to have quite a deep friendship judging by their conversation. From our information, Snake family also got the soaps at 3 gold coins, so it seems John wasn't intent on jacking up the prices even though we could pay it. So it seems he wished to repay us with sincerity, as well as he deliberately disclosed his plans on introducing new items which would be more helpful in future ventures. The maid was quite shocked by this evaluation, as she knew Vlad wouldn't say this most of the time. But his instincts were quite on the mark, as they had saved the lives of many members in the Blucia family in past incidences. Diana agreed to Vlad's evaluation, as she had got instructions from her father that she should trust Vlad at most of the times, as he was one of his father's right-hand man and helped them many times, and she too thought that they weren't the scheming kind, plus she liked the fact that John could cook and she could have new cuisines. Then after they decided to leave the auction and pay the manager of the auction and decided to see the market. Meanwhile, John and Joseph met with Jay and Eva's team. Jay had already met them after Philip saw him in the market looking at poisons, while the women were looking at new jewelry and magic equipment. Chapter 30. Diana agreed to Vlad's evaluation, as she had got instructions from her father that she should trust Vlad at most of the times, as he was one of his father's right-hand man and helped them many times, and she too thought that they weren't the scheming kind. Additionally, she also liked the fact that John could cook and she could try new cuisines later on. Later they decided to leave the auction and pay the manager of the auction and decided to see the market. Meanwhile, John and Joseph met with Jay and Eva's team. Jay had already met them after Philip saw him in the market looking at poisons, while the women were looking at new jewelry and magic equipment. After meeting with Eva and others, they decided to spend their day together. While conversing, Joseph described about their day to Eva, Sally, and Josephine, while Jay was looking at his new hunter's trap which he had brought previously, while it was Philip who helped him buy a potent poison for wild and magical beasts. They were quite interested when it came to the part where they discussed about Vlad and Princess Diana of Blucia Kingdom, while Eva and Josephine furrowed their brows and had an angry expression on their face which said everything, while Sally was giggling from the sidelines. However, this didn't stop their curiosity and they dug out as much information as possible from Joseph later on. They were very irked about the fact that Princess Diana was going to visit John's mansion to see his mansion and try his food, while John as usual acted dumb and said that it was important to receive her as a guest since it was a big business deal and a potential source of information, and it would be a good olive branch for them in the present and future. Watching this, Jay, Sally, and Joseph couldn't help but smile from the sidelines. While they were traveling, Vlad spotted their entourage from afar. As he knew John had very high sensing capabilities, he didn't try to hide himself from John and acted as if he was going with Diana and her men, and coincidentally spotted the team. This exchange took place only between John and Vlad, while others were unaware of it, as it was hard to spot people over long distances. Both of their entourages were going into different directions, so they didn't bump into each other. However, Diana's entourage still gained a lot of attention because of how grand it was. Many people thought it was some noble or royalty going through the streets, as it was a common case in this world, so Eva and others didn't pay much attention to it and went on their way. After going through the whole market for the day, they reached home and decided to take a bath and then have their dinner. Because of John, the varieties of cuisines had increased recently in Joseph's mansion. While they were relaxing, the servant who had gone to deliver the letter had returned and gave the letter to Philip addressed towards Joseph and John. During the dinner, Philip approached and said to Joseph while handing him the letter, "Master, your father has replied to your letter which you gave him earlier. and an appointment for tomorrow is set with Marquis Ray and your father for further discussions. Do you have any special instructions for tomorrow's meeting? Joseph later replied to Philip. Since we will be visiting Marquis as well, prepare a suitable gift for Marchioness. Prepare the bathing soaps which we had in stock for her, since there are none in the market, and I saw that it is very popular with noble women, so it would be a good gift. John, what do you think? Joseph then asked John. Sounds good. Maybe we can prepare ice cream as cuisine for her, which would at least have a good impression on Marquis and Marchioness. John thought for a while and replied to Joseph. Okay, we will go with your proposal. Philip, go and prepare according to the arrangements discussed here. Joseph agreed and immediately ordered Philip. As you wish, master, Philip replied, and then immediately got busy with arrangements and started ordering the servants to prepare the carriages and other necessary things which would be required next day. While it was also decided that Eva and others would join them and visit the Marquis tomorrow. No one had problems, and all of them got in their rooms to get some rest. The next day in the morning all of them had lunch and started preparing for the visit to Joseph's father and Marquis Ray. Philip prepared everything with food, soaps and other gifts required. Joseph's father Frank was one of the heads of the family, while most of the power was concentrated in the hands of his grandfather, Karl. He had 3 uncles and several other cousins. Today Joseph and Philip briefed John on the details of his family as they were going to meet them. At the same time, he briefed them on Marquis Ray and their family. Everyone later headed to the mansion of Marquis. In the letter, it was written that both Frank and Marquis would be meeting them both at Marquis's mansion. Philip headed to the center of Pearl City. Today's entourage was very grand with 7 carriages, unlike the normal times where there were only 2 to 3 carriages for travel. It could be seen that Marquis Ray's mansion was one of the biggest mansion in the city, only compared to the ones with royalty. It was made from stone and was 4 floors tall. There were several servants working in the mansion. After reaching the mansion and giving the invitation letter at the entrance, the butler of Marquis Ray came and invited them quickly. Today he was already informed that one of Frank's sons would be visiting them, and therefore he was already prepared. Joseph, John, and their team came inside the mansion and waited at one of the guest rooms while a maid was serving them tea and other snacks. The butler had gone to inform Frank and the Marquis of Joseph's arrival so that they can get to business earlier. Marchioness came in first and greeted Joseph, as she was familiar with Joseph from a young age. Joseph, did the sun come from the west today? You hardly come by the mansion nowadays. So what business did you have with Stephen and Frank today? I bet they won't call you brats unless it is something where they could make profits or gain somewhere else. Marchioness Anne was middle-aged woman with beautiful features. It seemed that she maintained her beauty regularly with herbs, potions, and other items. She was brunette with brown eyes with a height of 5 feet and 9 inches. She also had a son named Julius who was 18 recently, but he was in the Imperial Capital's Knight Academy completing his initial training.